If you've ever grown tomatoes, then you've certainly dealt with blight. One of the worst feelings as a gardener is when you go out to the garden and see your beautiful, healthy green tomato plants, and then you look down and see this. Blight. Oof. Blight is a common term for a fungal disease that mostly affects tomato plants and can do quick and significant damage to your plant's leaves and stems. If you don't treat it quickly, it will spread and damage your fruits as well and kill the plant and all of your beautiful tomatoes. It can also affect potatoes, fruit trees, and ornamental plants, which can lead to significant damage to your crops if it's not significantly managed. Blight spreads through fungal spores that are carried by insects, water, wind, animals. These all come from infected plants, and then they're deposited on the soil and infect other plants. This disease requires moisture to progress, so when dew or rain or lots of humidity comes in contact with fungal spores in the soil, they reproduce. When it rains, water hits the ground, splashing soil and spores onto the lower leaves of the plants, and then the disease starts showing leaves like this. So sad. Unfortunately, there is no cure for blights in plants or in the soil, but there are some really easy ways to control this disease so you can still have a fabulous garden season even if you have a little blight. The good news is I'm going to show you how to keep blight out of your garden in this video. Let's chat about everything you need to know about what blight is, what causes it, how to prevent it, and how to treat it. If you grow tomatoes, you need to know what to look out for and how to keep it out because you want to protect all of your hard work in the garden. These are some great examples of what blight looks like. Now let's talk about what to do at the first sign of blight in your garden. The first thing you want to do to treat blight in early tomato plants is to remove the affected leaves. It's critical that you do this carefully so that you don't spread the blight to other unaffected leaves or plants. And so doing this, you need to clean any garden equipment or pruners that you use on these plants with a disinfectant such as this isopropyl alcohol, at least at 70%, or a 10% bleach solution, which is just bleach diluted with water. For a quick and really effective way to clean the shears, you're going to dip the pruning shears into the disinfectant just like this, but then you want to wipe them and let them dry, or you can wipe them with a cloth dipped in the solution. After you prune a plant, you need to clean the shears with this disinfectant. Ideally, after you're done with the whole plant, you also want to wash them with soap, water, rinse, and dry them. This is going to make your garden pruning equipment wear down a little bit faster and be at a higher risk of rusting, so make sure to keep them dry and lubricated when you're not using them. So with your disinfectant tools, you want to remove any of these leaves really, really carefully. You don't want any of those leaves that I'm removing there to rub on other stems or leaves. You don't want them to drop onto the dirt. Definitely not. That's how it will spread to other plants. So be very careful. Remove one at a time. And then as soon as the infected leaf is removed, place them in a pile away from your garden. Once you have a pile from one plant being pruned, immediately remove them from the area and disinfect your shears again. It's really important that you also clean any plant supports, garden equipment, these earth box containers that I have, greenhouse edges. You have to clean that at the end of the season if you're still using it and just trying to manage the blight. If it's ever come in contact with blight, you need to use a disinfectant such as isopropyl alcohol, 10% bleach, or like a blight solution such as like Jay's fluid before you reuse them to make sure that there's no disease transfer. Because you can see how ugly those leaves are. They're yellow, they're brown, kind of crispy. And you want to clean hard surfaces or glass in a greenhouse as well the same way. So here you just want to really, really remove any affected leaves. It's super important because blight is a hard thing to combat. There's a couple different ways to characterize blight. The two main ways are early and late blight. There's also fire blight, which affects apple and pear trees, and bacterial blight, which is common in beans and grains, but it's most common in tomato plants. And again, you see this most often in warm, wet weather. So here I'm just using my little disinfectant solution, cleaning my shears every time to really stop the spread. And here I've got a lot of great examples of what blight looks like. The first year or two I gardened, I thought it was just poor watering, which does sometimes make you at a higher risk of blight spreading, but I thought it was just naturally the leaves dying. I didn't realize it was a fungal disease. So you know you have blight by the way your plants look. So look here at this plant. The initial symptom of blight is a rapidly spreading watery rot of leaves they're going to start to collapse, shrivel, and turn brown, just like that. Very ugly, very sad. Not this lush, beautiful jungle that you're looking like, those little spots there. During suitable conditions, which again is a lot of times it spreads faster in wet, really humid conditions, the pathogen will actively spread through the leaf tissue. The edges of the lesions will appear light green, and sometimes you can even see under the leaves like a fine white fungal growth. Blight symptoms, early blight symptoms usually begin after the first fruits appear on tomato plants. So it's not going to start, when you have a little seedling. It's going to start after you have all this beautiful fruit, which makes it even more sad. And it'll start with a few small brown lesions on the bottom leaves. And then as the lesions grow, they're going to take the shape of target-like rings with dry, dead plant tissue in the center. The surrounding plant tissue turns yellow and then brown, and then all those leaves are going to die and fall off of the plant. Usually early blight doesn't directly affect the fruits. I mean, look at all those gorgeous fruits. They're not affected at the moment. But the loss of the protective leaves can cause damage to the fruits. It can cause sun scald if they then get too much sun, or if the blight gets too bad, it will kill the whole plants. So keep an eye out for that, because look at all those gorgeous, gorgeous tomatoes. You definitely don't want to lose all of your hard work there. The second type of common blight is called late blight, and this is caused by a blight pathogen that's a microscopic fungus-like organism, and their spores are easily shed from infected leaves, and they could be windblown for very long distances. In order for the infection to spread, it has to be a long period of wetness, several hours, and so that's why it's most common after really heavy rainstorms with high winds, where it can spread from soil to soil. And then it spreads really rapidly through the plant tissues, killing it. So you can still see I've pruned a lot there, but it's still spreading. So I've started at the bottom. You can see there's not much blight at the top, but I still have more work to do. This is a couple days later after I remove those affected tissues, and you can see little tiny remnants of it up towards the top as well. So usually that blight, that's pretty common representation of blight, is these dark concentric rings on leaves, stem, and sometimes the fruit, and it often starts on the older leaves towards the bottom. Spreads rapidly in the warm, wet conditions. These large brown or olive green lesions with a gray border are more indicative of late blight. And once they hit the fruit, it'll be like a dry brown rot, and it definitely can be devastating. It'll cause the entire field to wilt and collapse. So it's really, really sad. When you go out there, sometimes I've had it happen before when you're on vacation and you come home and you're like, oh no, what happened? So after you've pruned most of the affected leaves, you do want to go out also and pick the fruit, because you want to remove any ripe or nearly ripe tomatoes to finish ripening inside. If you are going to spray it, you don't really want to eat fruit immediately after it's been sprayed. So remove any fruit. All these cherries I removed because they were very close. Oops, some spilled. Very close to being ripe or already ripe. So I picked those, and then I pruned all of the bottom. So I recommend removing all the lower leaves that touch the ground. Those leaves are the most often to show signs of disease, and they can really spread. So you want to remove any lower leaves where they meet the main stem, but are close to touching the ground, so that these plants have really good air circulation. You could see at the beginning of my video, I didn't do the best job initially with airflow. These plants are on a deck and they get a lot of wind from the back and the front, so I thought it would be okay to have them be a little bit closer together because they're getting so much, they're just in one single row. But I didn't trim the lower leaves as much as I should have. So the soil, when it was really wet, we had heavy rainstorms, the soil went up and started killing. So next season, I will definitely be removing any lower leaves that are even close to touching the soil, even up to 6 to 12 inches of lower inches of foliage. And later in the season, if the plants are really tall, you can go up to as high as 18 inches if it has enough support and strong growth up top. But you never want to prune more than a third of a plant at one time. Never. This is an option for spraying. So after the fruit's been removed and the leaves have been removed, the affected leaves, then you might want to consider spraying. There's two types of sprays: an organic spray, such as this is neem oil, or there's a chemical fungicide. So you can kind of decide what you want to use. If you're okay with using chemical sprays, this is a good example. This is what I use, diagnose. This can be more effective than a organic spray like a neem oil, but it's definitely more harmful to plants, humans, and animals if used improperly. So you need to really use it correctly. The neem oil that I showed before is a vegetable oil extracted from the seeds of the neem tree, a topical evergreen tree native to India, and it's a natural product with a wide range of uses, can often be used as a pesticide. This Daconil is much stronger, but it does give instructions, so be careful if you're using it. I always wear protective gear. So if I'm going to use a chemical spray, I'm going to use gloves that go all the way up my arms. I'm going to wear protective clothing. I'm going to wear long sleeves so that my arms are not exposed. I'm going to wear pants, socks, closed-toe shoes. That's really important because I don't want any of the sprays to splash back at me. My daughter's going to be inside. My pets are going to be inside. And I'm going to wear a mask too, because the last thing you want to be doing is be inhaling some of these chemical sprays if you have to use them. I usually try with organic sprays early in the season, and then if that's just not doing the trick, then I will go to the stronger chemical sprays. So again, cleaning the pruning equipment is so critical, because you will easily spread. The first year I gardened, I didn't do this. I thought it sounded like too much work, and I spread blight through all of my tomato plants. So I always do this now. It's pretty easy, just with the supplies that you have at home. Isopropyl alcohol or bleach, in a pinch rubbing alcohol, but it's not going to be quite as strong, or hydrogen peroxide, and some paper towel on your shears. So again, after you've kind of pruned these, you can see me going through again. I'm picking all of those, any affected lower leaves right before I spray too. Usually I don't attack plants with all of these steps at once. Typically I prune affected plants one day. The next day I'll go out and harvest any of the ripe fruits like this. And then the third day I'll spray, because I don't want to send them into a major shock. But you certainly could do it all the same day if you were really careful and methodical and didn't have too many leaves affected. So with these sprays, it's really important that you shake them really well. You want to evenly spray all sides of the plant surfaces to achieve the best results. And again, remember, this is really only for use on outdoor plants. Another important thing is that these can be used as a preventative thing. So you can start applying these sprays at the first sign of disease as a preventative measure. And you really want to cover all plant surfaces, including the undersides of the leaves. You really want to apply them in nice, calm weather. Early in the morning is better, so the plants have lots of time to dry before it gets too hot. Ideally, you don't want to pick a 100-degree day to do it. You want to be maybe a 75, 80-degree morning if you have the luxury of that type of weather with no rain. And you really don't want rain for at least 24 hours because you want it to really sit on those leaves. But make sure you read whatever spray you're using or making the product label for specific instructions on how to dilute it, how often to apply it, and how long you have to wait to harvest, because that is an important one. When I was showing the spray, the Daconil spray, you could see there's a label called PHI on there, and that will actually tell you how long you have to wait, one, between harvests, between sprays, and two, how long you have to wait after you spray it before you can actually harvest, because you don't want to go spray all these tomatoes and then 1 second later pick a tomato and eat it without washing it. That's not great. So that's why I picked all the ripe tomatoes first. It is safe to eat the fruits and vegetables after you've sprayed. You just want to really follow those intervals. Once it's dry, people and pets can re-enter the area. Again, you want to apply these sprays when you can leave the garden for a little while. You don't want to spray these sprays and then spend time pruning all of your other plants. One, because you have the blight on you now, but two, also it's just not safe to be around those chemicals long term. So definitely make sure you're following those instructions carefully. You want to be really smart about this. You also want to spray about 8 to 12 inches from the area. So you want to hold the spray and spray until the surface is wet. Again, after you spray, then make sure you're removing any affected leaves from the area. You definitely don't want to leave those to sit there where the water or rain or humidity can kind of pick up those blight pathogens and bring it back to your beautiful plants. So read those sprays when you're spraying for the best, most effective instructions and ways to use them. These sprays are really useful for diseases such as early blight, late blight. Daconel is also good for gray leaf spot, gray leaf mold, septoria leaf spot, fruit rot, all those things. And I do this for every plant. And I clean between each plant, so I'm not spreading it if I'm getting close to them. So again, I'm looking at whatever spray I'm using. I'm looking at the PHI number, which means the number of days to wait between the last application of the spray and the harvest. And according to Daconel, tomatoes you can wait 0 days for before you harvest, which is amazing. I usually do give it a couple of days, and I wash them really, really, really well. The minimum retreatment interval is 7 days, which means you can spray every 7 days with the spray if you need to. So I am really careful now when I see any signs of early blight. That's when I go out there and spray, because I don't want to be in the position where I'm losing my whole plants. There are other sprays. Several fungicide sprays are effective for treating blight in Michigan. You want ideally something that contains copper or streptomycin or other active ingredients. Some examples of other sprays are Revis, Forum, Ranman, different combinations. There is also a type of blight, which we talked about earlier, called fire blight, where streptomycin is a common choice when it's applied with a surfactant. I find that Daconel is the best choice for tomatoes. It's very easy to find. It's fairly inexpensive, something with chlorothalonil. But it's also a good idea to rotate between several types of fungicides, because you don't want your plants to get resistant to fungicides either, if that's what you're choosing to use. So again, you can see some beautiful tomatoes starting to ripe there. You can see the lower leaves are mostly cleared out. But I'm going to have to go in there every handful of days and remove the affected leaves. It is tedious, but that is the way to save all of your hard work. And again, with spraying, if you do choose to spray, be very mindful of beneficial insects like bees and ladybugs. You do not want to spray when they're most active during peak pollination, because these can do damage to living things. So these sprays are really not meant to be overused, not meant to be used improperly. They're only used, if blight is a true concern, and used according to the directions. So that, look at that ugly stuff. Oh, so devastating. So devastating. That's a great example. Other homemade organic fungicides that could be a little bit less effective than the chemical sprays, but much safer to the living things in your garden and around your garden, are things like a baking soda spray. You can mix 2 to 3 tablespoons of baking soda with a gallon of water, a tablespoon of vegetable oil, a few drops of dish soap, and spray the leaves. You could make a milk and water solution with fat-free milk with water, usually like a 1-to-1 ratio, and spray in the leaves. I haven't found that these are super, super helpful in a severe or getting to severe case like this. But in early blight, where it's just a couple of leaves, I think that'd be a great way to try to stay ahead of it. How to prevent blight. This is really what we want to focus on, because we never want this in our garden at all. So crop rotation is really important. Avoid planting the same species in the same location year after year. You don't want to reuse soil. These containers that I use all have blight in them, so unfortunately I will have to dump and get rid of this dirt. I'm not going to plant new plants in it, because they will just get blight earlier. So reusing soil or compost that has blight in it is going to increase the risk of a range of other diseases, and it could be distributed over another area into your potatoes or other parts of your garden. You want to choose plant-resistant varieties. If blight is really common in your area, if you live in a really hot, humid, wet area, there's certain tomatoes that are more resistant to blight. You also want to make sure you properly space. I'm going to do a little bit better with this next year. You want to make sure that they have ample room between the plants and around the plants, so that there's good airflow circulation to reduce the humidity in the plants. Sanitation, again, cleaning, disinfecting your garden tools with that method is so critical. And watering practices. You ideally want to water at the base of the plants. You don't want a lot of overhead water. You would think you would, because it kind of replicates rain, but it's actually better to water as close to the base of the plants to keep the foliage dry. You don't really want the leaves to get wet. You want them to take the water from the roots. And watering earlier in the day so they can dry before nightfall is another good way to do that. You can kind of check in to see how blight is doing in your area. There is a blight spy website that I use sometimes where gardeners can access forecasts of when blight is going to be active. It's really great for professional growers or farmers who have big, fields of potatoes, tomatoes, and things like that. But that is helpful as well. And again, rotating your crops. So ideally wait at least 4 years before you would use the soil again. If I were to reuse it, if this was a raised bed, I would not put potatoes or tomatoes in the same area where there was already blight. Lots of tomatoes are really susceptible to it, but there are some that are a little bit more immune. So definitely look into that. Greenhouse-grown tomato crops are less likely to be affected because wind-blown blight spores are just less likely to get into that greenhouse. So be really careful if you are going to use a greenhouse. That could be a good way to kind of put tomatoes in there to try to avoid the blight. Just a fun fact about blight, the most infamous example of blight in history is the Irish potato famine. This happened in the mid-19th century, and the pathogen was late blight. It destroyed potato crops all across Ireland, and it led to major widespread hunger. It was a huge period of famine in Ireland and a major point in history. So blight can definitely damage huge amounts of crops and lead to big impacts in history. When you're looking at your plants and wondering, do I have blight? There are other diseases to look out for. Septoria leaf spot does sometimes look like blight as well. That can be characterized by small, tan, light gray lesions with a dark border. Bacterial spot lesions are small with a dark center that may fall out. There are other diseases, so it may not necessarily be blight, but blight is definitely very common. Blight, unfortunately, is a serious threat to home gardens and commercial agriculture. But look at these beautiful tomato plants. I still have lots of gorgeous fruit that's ripening. It's been about 3 weeks since I started treating it, and the plants are doing just fine. I definitely have lost some of that lower foliage and a couple of fruits from it, but for the most part, the fruit is unaffected, and I'm growing nice, healthy, more green tomato flowers. It can be controlled, so understand the causes of blight, including the pathogens and what environmental conditions contribute to it. That's really the first step in protecting the plants. Prevent them through crop rotation, getting resistant varieties, sanitation. You can really reduce your risk of infection. And you can get rid of blight early using sprays, pruning, and get absolutely gorgeous tomato harvests such as this potato harvest. Your garden does not have to be damaged at the first sight of blight. So keep an eye out and be very careful with what it is, how to treat it, how to prevent it, and you will be enjoying these unbelievable summer tomatoes all season long. Hope it helps. Like and subscribe.